Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes wrapped up their debate, even though it really wasn't a debate. Largely, the topic of their whole conversation on InfoWars was specifically Donald Trump failing to live up to his expectations and kind of his presidency being a disappointment, more or less. Now, Alex Jones has ultimately said, like, listen, I'm on Trump's side. I want Trump to succeed. Democrats are after him. He's been very vocal about that with all the lawsuits. But he's also not going to pull punches. He's not going to completely abandon any criticism of Trump just because he likes Trump. So we have this clip, and we might not play the whole thing, but it's basically Alex Jones saying how Nick Fuentes was right about what Trump would do and how Nick didn't endorse Trump in 2024. He had Grow Up or War Part 2. And how they're basically going over like how this administration has failed so far, and Alex gives credit to Nick. So we'll watch this clip and then we'll go over it.
I said that before you came on. I said, listen, I have guests on that are consistently right. You can disagree with overall your views or whatever, but you've been dead on. So my North Star is who's the most accurate. That's what I have on. So you did predict all this, which makes me physically ill. So what? Look at the crystal ball, Nick Fuentes. What is going to happen, and then what do we do?
It's hard to say what is going to happen next because, you know, I was going to say we are in a way stuck. We are stuck with Trump for the next 4 years. And when I say stuck, I mean, whether you think it's good or bad, he's the president and he's in this incontestable position. That was sort of the aspect of it that was very concerning to me, which is that if you have Kamala Harris, she has no legitimacy. So a lot of people like to think, well, if Kamala won, what would that have looked like? Obviously, it would not have been as good. The economy wouldn't be as good. The border wouldn't have been as good, and that's obvious. But what was less concerning to me about Kamala against all of that is that she was a lot less stable. And not by that, I don't mean mentally. I mean that she had no legitimacy as a ruler, because she didn't win the Democrat primary fair and square and never did. Nobody would believe she won the general election. If she won, no one would accept that that was a fair and square deal. And so the regime would have been a lot less stable and would have had a lot less leeway. What I fear with Trump is that he has this cult-like status within the GOP. And when you look at the approval ratings over the past month, he has been declining with independents. He's hit a low with Democrats, as always. But his approval with Republicans has been remarkably stable. It's been stabilized at just under 90% approval, even in spite of everything, in spite of bombing Iran, in spite of floating the amnesty deal, in spite of the Epstein files. And so you say to yourself, where do we go from here? What do we do next? We're in this sort of intractable position where there's nothing we can do because he's there and no one can challenge him.
So that's the truth. And again, sorry for the longer clip, but it needed to be played. It needed to be said. This was majority the topic of their discussion. So let's talk about this, okay? Yes, the Trump presidency hasn't been all good. It has been quite the disappointment to some, but a win to others. It just depends on kind of what you were expecting. If you were expecting that he would release the Epstein files and that we would have all this transparency, like with Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, etc., you're probably very, very disappointed. You were disappointed because you wanted to see all of these things truly come to fruition and justice truly be served. And listen, I'm mad about it. I'm frustrated about it. We were promised that this giant sex trafficking ring would be brought down, where all of these celebrities, CEOs, politicians, etc., have been thought to be in it and linked to it. And the fact that these people aren't going to be brought down and justice isn't going to be served for these thousands of victims, kids at the time, mostly young women at the time, it's very nerve-wracking. It's very frustrating. And yes, we have a right to be mad. And so what Nick then talks about, too, is we do have a lame duck presidency now. Like Trump, he went on to talk about it in this interview with Alex Jones. He's talking about how, like, yeah, this is a lame duck president now. Like, he has survived everything. So he almost has, like, a God complex now. And it's something very interesting to point out because he's doing all these things now. He's trashing his supporters. He's saying, oh, you know, if you're still talking about the Epstein list and you were never really one of my supporters, he's trashing the base. He's putting the base down, which is something he never used to do. Nick also accurately points out, too, that he's getting more frazzled now. In fact, one thing he said in that interview was he's not built for the pressure anymore. It's been 10 years of the whole establishment, mostly the left, but the Washington, D.C. establishment, the blob, the swamp, whatever you want to call it, coming after him constantly. He's fighting every single day. And so over time, all of this has really built up and broken him, essentially. And he's 78 years old. He'll be or 79 years old. He'll be in his early 80s by the time he does become, he's out, right? He's at the end of his term. And it just goes to show, it begs the question, Biden was bad. Yes, I believe he was 81 or 82 when he got out. Maybe it was only 81. Nevertheless, lots of problems, right? Obviously, dementia. His doctor just came out, said he had dementia, was just diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, I believe. Terrible, obviously. And that was covered up. But Trump's going to be older than Biden was when he gets out. So, we need to raise a little bit of concern, what does happen? Something Nick also brought up was, God forbid, Trump has a heart attack and is not able to continue being president tomorrow. Are we comfortable with J.D. Vance just stepping in and becoming the 48th president of the United States? And even then, too, talking about his whole cabinet, we were sold it was going to be different this time. And it's not the case. It's not the case. You have neocons all over that administration, from the Marco Rubios to you have Tulsi Gabbard, who's still war hungry. And you have J.D. Vance, who's kind of teetering on the fence. It feels like he's playing both sides with the neocon, the Israel perspective, but also the white working class, the more far-right base. He's trying to placate to both. Something that Nick also pointed out, and I wanted to keep referencing what Nick and Alex were talking about here because it was very interesting, pivotal for the Trump base, for the MAGA base, because they're both part of the MAGA base, is that Nick is saying that JD is basically like little Tex Manchurian candidate, for lack of a better term, and how they kind of formed him and changed who he was 3 times just so he could become popular with a voting bloc, right? They're talking about how Nick's talking about how J.D. Vance changed his name multiple times. He went from a never Trumper, calling Trump Hitler, to kind of being more moderate, and now he's representing the white working class because of his story, right, growing up in Appalachia, but also now he's like a hardcore Trump fan. And Alex talked about, too, which was very interesting, speaking of J.D. Vance, he's talking about how 3 months before the vice presidential pick was announced, this is before Trump got shot in the head, right, shot in the ear, before the assassination attempt, J.D. was with Alex Jones at a meeting or something like that, or a lunch, saw him, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I got the nomination." Alex Jones was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, I got the nomination." So Alex admits right on camera, on live television here, that JD confirmed 3 months before this whole thing even happened, before he even got the nomination, that he knew, "Oh yeah, I had it," like literally what he said. And that's a little sketchy because we weren't told that. We were told the complete opposite. We were told it was between JD, between Marco Rubio, and between Tim Scott or something, whatever. But the point is, it's very sketchy. It's very weird. So there are a lot of questions about J.D. Vance. Normally, critics would say he just keeps shape-shifting. He's being a politician. Nobody knows what he actually believes. He switches up. And so, yeah, that was one of the big things that they talked about here. And they continued to discuss all this, right? And they were talking about the media now. The people that control the media switching sides, right? And I want to play this clip from Nick. And it's much shorter than what we previously had. But in this clip with Alex Jones, Nick talks about how the media is switching sides, and you saw all these woke ads a couple years ago, and now you're starting to see more advertisements, commercials that are leaning to the right, more conservative ads, right? You see the Sydney Sweeney jeans commercial, and then you have that Dunkin' commercial where it's the white actor talking about the drink that he's promoting, right? And listen to what he says, because I think this is a very accurate description of the media and what they will do for money.
With Trump winning in 24, nobody's talking about the rigged elections anymore. You notice that? Trump won in 24, and now people say, and there's polling on this, they say, we believe the elections are free and fair, and it's all legit. Now, with these new advertisements, the American Eagle, the Dunkin' Donuts, people say, oh, the advertisements are great again. People are being rolled right back into the system, supporting more Middle East wars, supporting more skilled and low-skilled immigration.
They push, and when it fails, they flip right back to put us to sleep. Oh,
Exactly.
we're in 1985. Everything's fine.
They play both sides. When the left is losing cachet, they flip to the right, and people say, we won. The revolution succeeded.
So, yeah, Nick gets it completely right there. Nick and Alex both get it completely right there. This is true. And think about the media, right? Think about the establishment, the system, the corporations. Now, we saw this with Pride Month this past June, right? A lot of these mainstream companies, right? Your Disneys, your Microsoft, your NFL teams, a little bit less than half the NFL teams. What did you see them do? They're not putting the Pride logo, the Pride flag in the bio anymore. And this is because these companies were able to kind of see and assess that this wasn't becoming popular. And what happens to corporations when the consumers see something that they're doing isn't popular? They don't like it. Well, they don't spend their money there. They rebel. They vote with their wallets. Like in any election, they physically rebel with their wallets. It's the thing that Americans know how to do the most. And if Americans aren't buying your product, then you're going to placate to obviously their beliefs and like what's trending. What are they feeling? And so what Nick is saying, what Alex are saying, is that it doesn't matter what the corporations don't believe anything. The system doesn't believe anything. They will they will say whatever and do whatever to get you to buy their product and invest back into their system, what they're doing. And I think it's very important that we all notice that, we all take notice of that, and we apply to just acting in the world as a whole in the future. It's not something that once you see it, once you get that the system, they'll literally say anything, do anything. This extends to the Republican and Democratic Party as well, right? We see this with how they're changing up their things, right? In the Republican Party in particular, how they're changing up their stance. The Trump administration is changing up their stance on the Epstein files, saying, oh, no, Pam Bondi, I have the files are on my desk, right? They'll release tomorrow. What happened that next day? It didn't happen. Kash Patel is saying, oh, yeah, he killed himself. Dan Bongino, he killed himself, when the evidence suggests that that's not true at all. And then you continue to see, oh, well, Trump says, we're going to release the files in a little bit, and ends up releasing the Martin Luther King Jr. files. And then they were saying how Epstein wasn't even a sex trafficker, which kind of goes against what Pam Bondi said in the beginning. Also, too, Ghislaine Maxwell, why is she in prison in Tampa for 25 years? That's a little bit weird. But then he says, oh, no, it's Obama's fault. And so now you keep seeing like the teetering. He's like going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and switching up on his base. Then blaming his base once again. I know I just brought that up a couple minutes ago. But blaming his base that, oh, just because you guys said that the Epstein files have to come out, you're not talking about this anymore. In fact, you were never one of my supporters anyway. It's like, okay, dude. Okay. So it's you literally heard it from Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes. Like very accurate. And you, once again, to participate in the system, you can't participate in the system, but you have to understand that they will say anything and do anything to get you to continue to be plugged in. Continue to be part of the matrix, continue to control your thoughts and like where you go and what you do essentially.